Hey Springfield, my name is Aaron Clark, and what you're about to watch are stories designed to create compassion, care, and love for one another in our community. We all have a story, we all have history, we all have an authentic story, and with that comes good, bad, and the ugly. But when we know each other's stories, when we hear each other's stories, it gives us the capacity to show more compassion and love for one another. So let's check out a video of an authentic story from one of your neighbors. So tell us your name.
Elijah Glaser.
Okay, what do you do now, Elijah?
So I have two businesses. One is Glaser Masonry, and it's a brick and block and stone company. I have a small crew. We are the best in town. I thought I'd just throw that out there. I also have another business. It's called Recovery X Incorporated. So it's a nonprofit gym for recovering addicts. Wow. So it's a free gym for anyone in addiction recovery that wants to come. We partner with McKinley Hall, Safe Harbor, Ethan Crossing soon. Just want to give a shout out to Wendy Doolittle at McKinley Hall, the director there, she had faith in us and believed in our program. They send their residential men and women to us twice a week for 1-hour classes, and we have 9 open public classes each week, and we're growing, we're building, we're serving, I don't want to say we're the golden ticket as far as recovery, but we're the cherry on top. So they get their counseling, they get their community from McKinley Hall, they get their therapy, they get pretty much everything that they need, like mentally and spiritually. They come to us and they get the physical part. So we add fitness, community, and recovery to their programming, and it's fantastic. We've had great results, man, and we're just growing.
Wow. Were you born and raised there in Springfield?
I was, yeah. I grew up on the east side. I am the middle child, so everything that entails. And I have an older brother and a younger sister. My brother and I, we are 17 months apart. And it was an interesting childhood. He was a great athlete, a great big brother. I'm about 8 inches smaller than him. So it was the middle child, always wanting to be as good as my big brother, a good athlete, a good whatever. And that actually drove me to become the person I am today, which is, I don't want to call myself a perfectionist, but I try to be the very best at absolutely everything I do. But that comes with its downfalls too, because you can't. None of us are the best at what we do.
What was your family, dynamic like for even growing up here in Springfield and just schools, and you mentioned brothers, what was your dynamic like?
Yeah, so it was a great childhood. Later on, you'll hear part of my story, and I am not the norm. I had a great mom and dad. They're still together to this day. Great childhood. It was kind of a rough neighborhood, which was okay. I mean, we didn't know anything different. Growing up, we had like 6 or 7 siblings around our block that was all about the same age as my brother and I. And so we'd play football, we'd play basketball, we do it all, football on pavement, this is the 80s, you go home, you're all scabbed up, mom's like, what happened, Along with that rough neighborhood came a lot of fights. And so with the middle child syndrome, I fought a lot growing up. I lost a lot. I got a little better later on, but I got in a lot of fights. And it was just rough, Went to Schaefer. That was my middle school. Then we moved to the north side my 8th grade year. Went to Roosevelt. And it was different back then. As far as schools were different back then. So this would have been early 90s. I went to Roosevelt, and I was like, where am I? It felt like a prep academy. I was like, it was so weird. No one was fighting in the halls. No one was getting beat up. I was like, wow, this is weird. So kind of like a shift in my my personality and kind of the trajectory of my life. And then I went to North. Actually, I remember the first week going to North and walking the halls, and just to be raw, I just hit puberty then, right? And so I probably weighed 90 pounds soaking wet. And I'm walking the halls, and there's these like giant men, you know? And I'm like, what's going on? And so 2 years after that, like my junior year, we went to state, junior and senior year. I didn't play, but that's the whole grown men thing. Like I was like, these guys are giant. What is going on, you know? But it was good. North was good. I found my clique. I was a skateboarder, played soccer. I wish I could do other sports, but I just didn't. And I got more involved in skateboarding, which was it fit my personality. I was kind of a daredevil. Loved to just do the big gaps and stairs, and and I love the community. We were kind of the outcast, but not the outcast. Do you know what I mean? Like back then, it was a little bit different for skateboarders. We kind of had, like people would look at us a certain way, but we were just kids, man. Out there having fun, grinding, and whatever. So yeah, that was growing up, and my freshman year, I was not really interested in school, and I think the reason I wasn't because I was labeled kind of early on as a troublemaker.
Due to the fights and stuff from previous schools.
And I believe there's undiagnosed ADHD, and I was just a boy, and they didn't know how to teach a kid like me, so it was kind of like, oh, Eli, quit acting up, Eli, quit talking to so and I can't sit still, like that's just, it's not me. So I kind of adopted that identity that the teachers were telling me early on. So by the time the freshman year hit, I really didn't care too much. So end of my freshman year, I only had like 1.5 credits.
Wow.
Like it was bad. It was bad. I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know how long you want this to go on for. Skipping school my freshman year, me and a friend, we walked to my house. We got to school, left right away before first period, walked to my house. My parents were supposed to be at work. They were when we got there. So we're in the kitchen, we're, cooking breakfast. We got the pan out, we got toast in the toaster, and I hear my mom's car pull up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we go out on the back deck, and we're like hiding. And we're like, maybe she just got to run in real quick and get coffee and leave or something. So we're on the back deck, and then and we gathered everything up, by the way. We got the eggs, and we got everything. And I'm sure it smells like bacon in there and like everything else. But so my mom walks in the kitchen. I'm like, oh man, I think we're cool, 2 seconds later, the toast pops out of the toaster. And I'm like, oh. And she didn't even call the other kids' names. She was like, Eli. And I was like, all right, Mom. So I just walk in. So that was kind of it, But I got my stuff together, graduated with pretty good GPA, and kind of realized that I really love learning and educating myself. And so that was kind of the end of that.
How did you get to, you mentioned your story and you one of your business Recovery X.
Mm-hmm.
And so walk us through that journey to where you are now,
Okay.
high school and kind of what path did you take, and then what led you into even starting Recovery X and just your story. Walk us through that.
How much time do we have?
Just share it, man.
All right. So I just want to kind of, this is an excerpt into who I am today. So I'm a husband and I'm a father of 5 children. So when I graduated high school, I wanted to do something different. And I was always chasing, I don't know if I want to call it freedom, or maybe escape, or maybe a blend of both. And the escape part's kind of, I really, looking back, I really wasn't comfortable with who I was. So I was always looking for that. So I had a friend that one day, right after high school, he said, hey, let's go hitchhiking. And this was 97, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And at the time, I was dating a girl, and so we kind of just broke it off real quick, and we just went on the road. And we actually started in Roanoke, Virginia, and then we went all the way to California, just hitchhiked all the way. So on the way, met a skinhead in Tennessee, which was frightening. Picked us up in his car. I just kept my mouth shut. Like, I don't know if this dude's got guns under his seat or what. Met some really weird people. One was in the Painted Desert in Arizona. This guy, he thought he was a messiah. It was like a commune, like a hippie commune.
Wow.
And his name was Bob. So Bob the Messiah, if you're out there, I don't know what's going. I don't know if you've been resurrected or what. Went to a Hare Krishna commune, which was very interesting. Met a guy who thought he was a vampire. All sorts of stuff. Anyways, so I'm out in California, doing my thing, and I meet these 3 people, and I start traveling with them. And they have a pickup truck, and we're driving around. We're in Southern California. And their idea was they were going to go to the coast, and they're going to sell their truck, and they were going to get boat tickets to Hawaii. So they were just going to sail to Hawaii. So they're like, Eli, we'll have enough money, you can come with us. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. So a couple days pass, and I'm like, I miss my girlfriend that I broke up with. I mean, to be honest, I'm young, she was awesome. So I'm like, no, I'm cool. So I come back to Ohio. They go to Hawaii. I come back to Ohio. I try to get my girlfriend back. She didn't want to have anything to do with me. There's all these dudes flocking at her, and, she's keeping them arm's distance. But eventually we get together. And we actually got together, back together on Halloween night. This would have been like 98. So my girlfriend got pregnant. And we didn't really know what to do. It was brand new. We just got back together. Long story short, that's my wife today of 21 years.
Wow.
And we have 5 kids together. Wow. And I made the right decision, man. Or I'd have been in Kauai just like, I don't know, Matthew McConaughey in it, with a djembe and out on a canoe all day, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been my life, surfing every morning and, that kind of thing. So married, 5 kids. So the path to Recovery X, I needed to get a real job. So I found out about Bricklayers Union in Dayton. So I started that. It's a 4-year apprenticeship, and then you get your journeyman's card. And the cool thing about it is you can travel anywhere in the U.S. It's a national card, and I can go work in any city that I want. So I'm like, okay, this is great. If we ever decide to move, then we can do this. So got my journeyman's card, started doing side jobs on my own. Young kids, wife staying at home, so I'm working ungodly amount of hours, just a lot. I was on a side job one night. I was on, I'm not going to say the building, but it was a building in town. And I was on a ladder about 25 feet high, using a grinder, trying to get out mortar joints. And the grinder kicked on me, and it kind of made me jerk. Fell off the ladder 25 feet. Wow. Was taken to the hospital. Messed my back up bad. And I was having issues before that. And it was the first time I've ever experienced opiates.
Wow.
Yeah. And they gave me, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the name. Demerol? What is it? Dilaudid.
Okay.
Sorry to act so excited about it. But it was almost like it was what I've been looking for my whole life. And that's messed up. And I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. Anyways, did x-rays on my back, MRIs. I had osteoarthritis, degenerative disc disease, and this was all from prior. This wasn't even from the fall. My discs blew out, out of my spine, at the lower part of my spine, L5, S1. So it was a mess. So obviously went to my doctor. Everyone knows about the epidemic now. So he prescribed me, Percocets, muscle relaxers. At that time, I was on depression medication, anxiety, sleeping medication, a cocktail full of just, a road to nowhere. So I became very dependent on it. And this is over a course of years. My wife will say that I was an addict for 10 years and try to get clean, which I agree with her at this point. But the first like 2 or 3 years, it was manageable. I mean, I was taking it as prescribed, but it just got to a point where I wasn't. And I would take everything early, run out, go through withdrawals. Don't want to feel like that, so then I would find them. You know, I knew people in the community. I'd buy them from them. It got bad. It got real bad. Bad to the point where marriage was failing. I was a terrible father. I didn't know who I was. I hated who I was. And, man, I tried to quit, dude. I mean, it was like white knuckling every day. Like, I just can't do this. It got to the point where I'd look in the mirror in the morning just to brush my teeth, and I couldn't even look at myself because I hated that guy. Hated him with a passion because he was weak. You know what I mean? And I'm not weak. And, you know, around that time is when I think it's the American Medical Association, I can't remember the exact name, said that addiction is a disease. So for me to try to willfully stop and to call myself weak and not have the power to do so was actually an incorrect thought. I didn't realize that at the time, but for them to label something as a disease, it's not just the point of, hey, I'm going to quit. You know, a lot of people are affected by addicts. You know, pretty much everyone knows someone, a friend, family member. Like, yeah, man, I drink on the weekends, but this dude, like, he takes it too far, and, like, he just needs to stop. It's not that easy, you know. My grandpa was an alcoholic. He was in World War II, came back, an amazing man, truly an amazing man. But he was an alcoholic, and I see how my dad and his six siblings suffer to this day from that. And the repercussions, thank you, from that are still playing out, and it's generational. I want to tell another quick story, if you don't mind.
Hey, go ahead, man.
So the way my grandfather got into rehab, my dad and his two brothers, my dad, my Uncle Pat, my Uncle Chris, they just went pick my grandpa up one morning. They're like, hey, let's go for a ride. And he's like, what? Where are we going? He's like, let's just roll around. And they had like a bottle of whiskey, right? I mean, this was way back in the day, probably before seatbelts. But they gave him the bottle of whiskey, and he's sitting in the front seat, and they're listening to music, and they're just driving around. And they keep passing him the bottle, and he just keeps drinking it. And the only place back then was down in Portsmouth, some rehab down in Portsmouth. And so they get to this place, and my grandpa's wasted by this time, you know, probably barely walk. And you have to sign yourself in. You know, he's an adult, so he has to admit himself into this place. And so they go into this place, and they convince him it's like a club or a bar or something. They're like, oh, man, we just got to sign our name right here to get in. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, and he just signs his name on this paper, and he goes in, and he's admitted. But a week later, my dad brings us down there. I don't remember this. I can't even remember how young I was, but I was young. Brings us down there, so he stayed for a week. And brought us kids, and my dad's like, my grandpa's name's Doc. He said, Doc, I'm proud of you. You weren't sober for us, but these are your grandkids. It's time. And he was sober the rest of his life.
Wow.
AA, and, you know, worked the program, had a sponsor. And, you know, when I was young, I didn't realize any of this. My grandpa was just my grandpa, man. Like, he'd take us camping and, like, but the struggle he went through, you know, this is before it was a disease, you know, so the struggle he went through was probably tough back then. And, you know, we were speaking of war earlier, you know, before we started this, and I don't know what he saw. You know, he was in invasion of Normandy and all that, and I don't know.
So you see how that from what your grandfather went through and it was passed on to your father, you can see that lineage of addiction
Yeah.
going through the family, and then you struggled with your own
Yeah.
addiction as well. You're saying how it played on your kids. You were a
Mm-hmm.
great father and a great husband. So what was your lowest point with your addiction, and then how did you come out of that?
Yeah. So I think about my grandpa a lot. I think about, like I was talking about, his kids. He has 7. And their relationship with him towards the end. They didn't tell us a lot, but I am so grateful I am where I am today. Because who knows how my kids would have been with me today. If it would have been 10 years from now when they all had grandkids, my grandkids. So that was one of the parts. So I got so bad, my marriage was almost over. I mean, it was there, man. Like, and I wanted to die. And literally, the only thing that stopped myself from killing myself was my kids. I knew my wife would be okay because she's strong, But they're kids, I mean, who knows what would have happened to them. And, just the generation from there, like just that trauma. I'm dead, their kids, on and on. It's a seed I didn't want to plant, So anyways, I was like, okay, talking to my wife one day. This is it. What do I do? I was like, I'll go to rehab. Google the first rehab, and those rehabs on top of Google list, they got some money. They got the search engine optimization going on. You know what I mean? And they just suck you right in. So the first one that came up was the treatment center. Clever, man. They're so smart. So they're like, you call them, and man, these guys don't mess around. They're like, what's your name? How long you been using? What are you on? When can you get here? We're going to book you a flight for later today, and you're coming down. What? So that's what we did, man. Booked a flight down to Florida, which was at the time the epicenter of rehabs. The funny part is, though, right before this, I was sober. Wasn't in recovery, but I was sober. So I could have passed a drug test. You can't get into rehab if you pass a drug test. You have to be dirty, or insurance won't cover it. So before my flight, my wife had to give me pills.
Wow.
So my wife gave me pills, got on the plane, flew down to Florida. They picked me up in a Cadillac Escalade. That's what kind of place this is, man. Get me there. It's the first time I ever seen Teslas. The whole parking lot's full of Teslas. That's a side point, sorry, but they made some money. I'm glad that happened, though. It was the last time I'm going to use. A lot of people, they go into rehab and they still kind of got that itch, like, man, if I could just use one more time. That was my last time. I was like, okay, that's it. Went to rehab. At this point, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but at this point, I didn't want to have anything to do with God. I prayed, screamed, yelled, everything I could do for God to take this away. It didn't work. So they had these different paths at rehab, and one was a faith path, and then the other was like a 12-step. The other was like holistic, like woo-woo kind of stuff. So they had all these paths. Didn't want anything to do with the God path, right? So I was like, nah, man. But it was about 3 weeks into rehab. I'm going to classes. I'm meeting people, learning how to work the steps, all that good stuff. We have group counseling. Feeling pretty good, really good. Feeding us good. I mean, we had like crab legs every other day. It was awesome. And then I heard these guys talking one day, and they're like, hey, we're going to the beach this weekend. I was like, how are you going to the beach? And they're like, oh, we're getting baptized. I was like, I'll get baptized again. And so I went to the chaplain's door, and his door was swung open. He was sitting in there. I didn't want to have anything to do with him, right? So I just kind of like was write my name on this paper that's on the door to go get baptized that weekend. And he's like, hey, and he calls me in there. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go, man. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I just want to go to the beach, get back. I didn't say the beach. I said, I just want to get baptized, man. He said, what's your name? Come on in. So we start talking. And he's like, so, he's asked me my story. And I said, look, man, I don't want anything to do with what you're selling. I said, I probably know the Bible better than you. I've preached, I've taught classes, I've done it all. And he's like, well, just, tell me a little bit about you. I said, okay, I'll play this game. And then he said, oh, so you know the Bible? I'm like, yeah. He's like, tell me about the prodigal son. I said, that's not going to work, bro. I said, I am not the prodigal son. He said, indulge me. He said, just tell it to me. I'm like, okay. So I go through the whole thing, 2 sons. One takes his inheritance, says his dad's dead, takes his money, squanders it. Other son's back at home. Son that squanders it realizes that the servants at his dad's house has a lot better than him, And so he's like, I'm just going to go back to my dad's house, and I'll serve. I'll just like wait tables, clean the pig pen, whatever, just to have more food and shelter over my head. And sure enough, the son's walking back and his dad's waiting for him. And, when I was saying that, the dude stopped me and he was like, if you're that guy and that's your father and that's God, are you a servant or are you a son? And it was the first time that ever hit me. I mean, I knew that. I mean, I've read it a million times. Like, I knew that, but I didn't know it. Yeah. It was up here. Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't down there. And that goes back to my story. The middle child, wanting an escape or freedom. I was always working, always striving to be better, always trying to earn love, acceptance. And that was the first time it hit me, man. And I just I was like a faucet. It's the first time I ever realized I was a son. Wow. No matter what. That's crazy. That's crazy. It doesn't matter, the people I stole from. It doesn't matter that I lied and manipulated my wife. It doesn't matter that I was a bad father for all those years. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm a son, no matter what. 100%. It's crazy, right? Yeah. Months later, I realized I'm not going to call it a vision or whatever. Anyways, same story was playing out in my head. I was the father this time. And this dude walks up on me, and he's my son. And he's got his head down, and he's crying. And I feel it from the father's perspective. And my son's walking up, and I lift up his head, and it's literally my son. Wow. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I did this, and he's explaining. I'm like, shut up, man. Like, you don't have to explain anything. You will literally always be my kid. Like, you are my son, like, no matter what. And so I've seen it from both perspectives now, and it was just that guilt, that shame, that condemnation that I put on myself. I put it on myself, Yeah. So, I know that was a little side note, a little tangent. Went to rehab, came back, got a sponsor. By this point, I'm off all medications, depressants, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, no sleepy med, nothing. First time in long time. Wow. Got a sponsor. And I've done most of this before. And he mentioned to me, he was like, hey, you ever work out? And I said, yeah, I used to, worked out when I was younger. And he said, there's this weird race. It's called the Spartan race, coming up in October. This is like 4 months away. He's like, you want to train for it? And I was like, sure. I was like, what is this race? I was like, I hate running. And he was like, well, you run a little bit and then you like climb a rope. And I'm a little guy. I could do stuff like that. And he's like, you run a little bit and you carry like a sandbag. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. You know, I ain't going to run half marathon. I'm not that guy, right? Which is fine. If you are that guy, do your thing. But so anyway, started training for it. A couple months went by and I'm driving in my truck to work in the morning. Nothing's on the radio. I'm not thinking of anything. And I just start smiling. And I know that sounds weird, man. I know that sounds weird. But it was the first time I smiled on my own. Like first time I was happy for no reason. And I realized my depression was gone. My anxiety was gone. And I was like, what is going on? Like, you know, I've had depression my whole life, you know, I've had anxiety my whole life. I've struggled with mental health my whole life. And so I'm like, okay, you know, I'm self-diagnosing. Okay, yeah, I got a sponsor. That's been done before. You know, I'm going to meetings. That's been done before. Relationship with my wife's good. That's been done. You know, checking off all these. What's different is I'm working out. So I go home and I'm just like Googling, like, is there research to back up fitness and recovery? Hardly anything. I mean, like back in the 70s and 80s, like old studies, like hardly any studies. And this was, you know, this was 5.5 years ago. And, but I put them together. So there's studies that show that if you're in long-term drug use, substance use disorder, what happens is it messes up your neural pathways. So you stop producing all the feel-good chemicals that we're born with. So no more dopamine, no more serotonin, no more oxytocin, nothing that every human being has. So when addicts stop using, these neural pathways are stopped. You can't feel good. You don't sleep well. You have anxiety. You're depressed. And that's a recipe for relapse. I mean, you know, all right, you go get clean, stay clean. You know, it's willpower. You do it. Yeah, but man, I'm depressed, dude. I can't handle any emotions or any stress or anything. Like, I'm going to go use again. And then there's research on fitness where anyone that does, I don't know exact amount, 3 days a week, 20-minute cardio I can't remember the exact thing. But you work out, you can rebuild those neural pathways in your brain. You can start producing dopamine, all of that again. And I'm like, why doesn't anyone just put these two together? Like, people in recovery need to be working out. Like, this is the cherry on top, you know? So that's when I thought, like, oh, man, we got to start a gym. We got to do something. So I got a business partner, brought him in. Great guy, dude. So we just brainstormed for like 9 months, like hardcore. Lance Cartmel, great guy. He's a firefighter in town. And man, we put in the work. Going around, meeting with people, telling people what we want to do. Well, in Springfield, you tell people what you want to do. They're like, oh, that's cool. You know, kind of pat you on the back. That's cool. You want to do that? Until you do something, nothing happens. They don't really believe you because everyone has ideas, which I did my whole life, but I just never followed through on them. This one was a little more important. If we can get this in our community and give people an opportunity to have another space other than like the rehabs that they go to, other meetings, just something else, it's going to be great. So we started with McKinley Hall. We actually, Champion City CrossFit allowed us to use their facility for about 9 months, which was just, I mean, incredible. Because we met with other gyms and stuff and, you know, all closed doors. And Wendy Doolittle at McKinley Hall was like, once you get started, I'll send the McKinley Hall residential men to you. I was like, sweet. So we did that. They're sending the men to us for months and months. And then we got this small place at the Central Community Center. It used to be the Central United Methodist Church right downtown. And when I say place, I mean basement. And when I say space, I mean 800 square feet. But we did it, you know. I mean, we have the weights in there. Carrie McGee at McKinley Hall got us a grant that was partnered with Central Community Center, and we're able to buy equipment because we obviously we don't have no money. We're nonprofit, like just starting out. So we got some gym equipment. Alpha Athletics, the guys who are personal trainers at Springfield Health and Fitness, they donated, I mean, barbells, a rig, plates, like all sorts of stuff to us. Like, so we start seeing, once we got started, we started seeing all these people from the community that we have spoken to before. They're like, let's help them out. And they just jump in, man. And there's a lot of hope, you know. It's not just a new shiny thing, but people, if you're doing something, people will support you.
Yeah.
You know, the organizations will come together. Right now, we're at 1101 East High Street, which is right next to the Greek Orthodox Church and across from Catholic Central. That whole facility, that complex, is owned by MHRB, Mental Health and Rehabilitation Board. So I met with them for a couple of months and just did everything but begged, but they were cool, man. So they gave us a whole gymnasium, and so that's where our gym is now.
Wow.
So even they came in and they're like, here's a gym. Okay, how much do we owe you? It's free.
Wow.
Dude, they pay everything. I mean, all the utilities, literally everything. All we need to do is just cleaning supplies and just keep it clean. And actually, some of their residents come and work out with us now. So we don't just, you know, serve, you know, people in recovery, but it's also people who serve people in recovery. Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic, man.
That's amazing, man. And as we, you know, wrap up, it's just amazing to hear your journey and your story. Even how God has just brought you through, you know, and now, what's your relationship like now with your family, man? You know, you seem like you're in a better place, better headspace. But as we wrap up, man, just where are you? How are you feeling now, just about life?
Yeah. So with the family, man, it's fantastic, dude. You know, COVID was rough for a lot of people. For me, it was fantastic. My oldest daughter goes to WIT, and she had to come home. My oldest son, who lives on his own, he had to come home. So we had all 5 kids in the same house and spent that time together. Man, we'd play cards at night. We'd watch movies together. It was incredible, man. One of the best times of my life, really. It was just amazing, dude. My daughter was my oldest daughter, she's 22. She was, so she was 16 when I went to rehab, 15 or 16. So she knew what was going on, you know. She's not dumb. So, you know, when I come back, you know, our relationship was a little bit different. And we've had a lot of serious talks, you know. And it's really cool, man. Just earlier this week, she actually texted me and said, "Dad, I'm having a hard time. Give me a call when you can." Dude, that's huge, right? I mean, that was like, because Mom's always there. Mom is always there, and my wife is amazing. But that was cool, man. That was really cool. My son and I, he's 19. He's actually in the Bricklayers Union right now, going through his apprenticeship, which is really neat. You know, I wanted him to do whatever he wanted, but he's going that route. Hopefully one day he can take over the business or let old Dad's back rest a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
We have a great relationship. We work out together. He comes to the gym. My middle daughter, Aaliyah, she's 16. She had choir last night at Springfield High. She's amazing. We have such a good time together. My son is Aiden. He's 14. He goes to STEM. One of the most colorful people I've ever met. Like, he brings color to a black and white world, you know? Like, he's great. And my youngest is a perfect blend between my wife and I, which is, we'll see how that plays out. She's fantastic, though. She's great, man. She's got this head of curls, just like, so it's good, man. My wife and I, we've never been better. It was hard coming back. Marital counseling, the whole 9 yards for years. But we put the work in, man. Had a lot of hard conversations, a lot of transparency, a lot of vulnerability, laying it all out there, a lot of crying, a lot of yelling. We're good now, man. It's cool. Can't remember the second part to your question.
You
You
answered
said
all of
family
it,
and then something else. Life.
man. Life.
Life is busy, man.
Yeah, as we wrap up, man.
Life is busy. Life is good though, man. I believe someone here wanted me to tell this story, so I'll tell it. So I got in obstacle course racing. You still want me to tell it?
Sure,
Okay.
man. We end with this, man.
All right. I got in obstacle course racing because I love the Spartan race. I did it first time, took forever, right? It was terrible. It's 5 miles, took 2 hours, like mud up to here. Like it was bad, man. But at the end, I was like, my sponsor and I did it together. At the end, I was like, dude, I could be good at this. And he was like, you think? And I was like, I can. But I mean, that's my personality. I want to be the best at everything. So, started like actually training for it, learning how to train for it, competing, doing my best, right? Started to get pretty good, tweaking my training a little bit, learning how to do, certain things. Had the gym at the time, so I could do everything at my own gym. It was cool. And found out about this race in Columbus. This was October 2019. And I was like, cool. I did all Spartan races before this, but there's other obstacle course racing out there. And so I just Googled, OCR near me. I was sick of traveling. Sometimes I go to West Virginia, all over. I was like, cool, there's a race in Columbus. Signed up for it. My wife's like, you want anyone to go with you, one of the kids? I was like, no, it's just I think it's a small race, like only take, an hour or so. I'll be back home, whatever. And so I roll up. This first thing, it was like 6:30. Race starts at like 7:30. I pull in this like parking lot, and it's pretty packed, so there's a decent amount of people there. And then I see all these people like running around, getting warmed up, and they all got jerseys on. And they all got these like OCR shirt jerseys on that say like USA and their names on the back. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, who are these people? I've never seen this in my life. I mean, like most of the time people just take their shirt off and run, And so I go to sign up at the registry, and I'm signing my name, giving them my ID, and I'm like, hey, is there something special about this race? Like, who are all these people with their names on their jerseys and stuff, And they're like, yeah, this is the national championship. I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, these are the best racers from the U.S. are all here. And I'm like, it's not intimidating at all, So anyways, at first I get scared, of course. I'm always nervous before a race, any competition. And then I'm like, I just do the best I can. I mean, that's all I can do, right? If I do well, I do well. If I don't, I don't. At least I get the race with the best, So I just did my thing, I passed some people, They let us go every 15 seconds, so it's different than like a full race where everyone just says go and they go. So I had no idea where I was, every 15 seconds. So I passed a couple people, and I pushed hard, I mean, I pushed pretty hard. I get done, go back to the results tent, felt pretty good about my performance, and ended up with second in the nation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was my age group. I'm older, but still, I was like, wow, that's crazy, man.
Wow.
Crazy, yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
That's.
I'm retired now, though. I don't do that no more.
You can't do it again, man. You don't think so?
I'm so tired of running. I'm not a fan. I like competing, but I just don't like putting in the miles per week,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is great, man. Elijah, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.